Welcome into an all-new episode of the American Huddle. Happy to have you with us here on this Wednesday night. Alongside Andy Gresh, I'm Haley Outen. Andy, this week between both national polls, voters have finally started to take notice as Memphis and SMU have broken into both the coaches poll and the AP poll. Why is that happening, in your opinion, heading into week 6?
Well, I think it's the body of work for SMU. They've got wins against a couple of big brands, and that gets on the radar of the rubes who don't pay attention to any team other than Cincinnati and UCF in terms of the writers in college football. And I think with UCF, they have earned an appropriate level of respect that the loss to Pitt, they can start to climb back in the polls here. But SMU is hot. Memphis, I think, will be there as well. There are more people across the country because of UCF, I think, that are realizing that there's depth in the American. And because of that, those teams should be nationally ranked.
All right, well, action gets started in the American on Thursday night. It's October, so we're finally starting to get into conference play. And it all gets started when Temple heads to ECU. The Owls, Andy, they're coming off of a 24-2 win against Georgia Tech. How big was the Temple defense in that game?
Well, it was massive because there's a big transition going on at Georgia Tech. But look, after the loss to Buffalo, the Temple defense needed to find a way to bounce back. They did it in a big way. Special teams, they're not as elite as we thought they were, but they're still pretty doggone good.
Well, they're going to take on ECU, a nice home game for the Pirates. How do you expect these two teams to match up?
Well, I think for ECU, there's still the transition going on of getting used to Mike Houston's offense, and I think that will take all season. Now, they're coming along a little bit. We saw them get a win last week against an Old Dominion team who had just moved up from FCS a couple years ago. And look, I think even Mike Houston understands this as well. He's used to walking into places and winning right away. This is going to be a little bit of a different transition. Number one, the American is the best conference in which he is coached in, and he needs to build that roster up with his kind of guys to fit his scheme. Nevertheless, he's a great coach. He's won everywhere, and people at ECU should be excited for the future with Mike Houston.
All right, Temple and ECU, you can catch that one Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Friday night, people could argue possibly the biggest conference game of the year, especially when it comes to the East Division. UCF heads to Cincinnati. The Knights have won 19 straight conference games. What is the likeliness that they pick up their 20th on the road in Cincinnati?
Yeah, I think UCF is going to get it. And the difference is I think UCF can score on pretty much anybody in college football. Whereas with Cincinnati, to me, it's a little more formulaic. You still have a young quarterback in Desmond Ridder. You need to get Michael Warren in the running game going. It feels like to me, Haley, and I could be wrong, Cincinnati peeps, but if they don't run the ball, meaning Cincinnati, I don't know if they can win games consistently. Whereas if UCF doesn't run the ball very well, they can still rip it for 385 yards, 4 touchdowns, and put up enough points to be able to win. I like the Knights, but I'll tell you this, what they're building in Cincinnati is going to be the challenger, I think, over the next 2 years to that crown that UCF wears right now.
The UCF offense averaging about 49 points a game, and on the other side for Cincinnati, about 28, so should be an exciting Friday night matchup. More conference action as well on Saturday. USF heads to UConn, and Andy, the Triple E mosquito threat has taken over New England, so the game time of this one has been moved up to noon. But probably the biggest question for both of these teams is at the quarterback position. Steven Krajewski out with a fractured clavicle, and on the other side for USF, they've been bouncing back between Jordan McLeod and Blake Barnett.
Yeah, I think it's a situation where USF has got a little more quarterback depth, so I feel good about them. And in all honesty, Haley, I think both coaches, they'd love a rock fight. I mean, you're 10-7 fourth quarter. Both coaches would feel like they're in control. Their defenses would be doing a good job. And then it's the whole, do we have some sort of play that we can pull out to try to find a way to win the game? We know that UConn is very much on the struggle bus. USF starting to snap out of it a little bit. I expect the Bulls to get a win, but I think this is going to be a real ugly game.
All right, you can catch that one on CBS Sports Network. That will be playing back at 7 p.m. Eastern, and you can catch it online live at noon. Tulsa visiting SMU as well on Saturday night. The Mustangs are 5-0 for the first time since 1983, and they come in at number 24 in this week's AP poll. Quarterback Shane Buechele, Andy, he seems to be fitting in pretty nicely into Sonny Dykes' system.
Yeah, I mean, he's been great with Sonny Dykes. And to me, when you have a quarterback who can come in and say, come on, boys, let's go, and get them in the huddle, and they believe. You can see that football team believes in Shane Buechele, and Tulsa's on the rise. I don't think they're going to get SMU, and in fact, if you're SMU, I think you're now starting to have the dreams of, hey, listen, we get Memphis towards the end of the year here. Why can't it be us? So if you're SMU, continue to put up the numbers that you have, continue to gain respect in the polls, and I think everything else will take care of itself. But SMU, the surprise of the American, but they're legit.
All right, let's step out of conference for a second. Tulane at Army, noon Eastern on CBS Sports Network Saturday. The Green Wave, they had some time to cool down from that Thursday night thriller we saw a couple weeks ago against Houston. Now they head to Army. Andy, pretty great for quarterback Justin McMillan. He's 8-2 as the Tulane starter. How do you like this Tulane team heading on the road?
I like them a lot, and I think a part of the hook here is that they get some extra time to prepare for Army, and given what Army runs on offense, very similar to what Navy does, so they've seen it. So the principles are still there. It's just reinforcing it, and having those couple extra days, I think, is really going to go a long way to making Tulane competitive in this one. And you mentioned Justin McMillan, and look, my critique last year of Tulane was, got to find a way to get more out of the passing game. They're doing that now on a much more consistent basis. They are very much, I'm sure Army will be the college football writers' favorite in this one. Tulane's got a great chance to go in there and get the win, and if they do, look out for them.
Air Force also at Navy on Saturday. The quest for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy begins for the midshipmen. Now, Andy, the Mids were outmatched at Memphis, especially in the second half on Saturday. They got outscored 21-3. Where are the struggles coming from Ken Niumatalolo's squad?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of Malcolm Perry getting dinged up. You know, I saw a little bit of last week's game, and you know, he takes a ding and you get him back in the game and you worry about his ability to really turn and cut it loose. And people haven't caught up to what Navy's doing offensively. I think it's execution, but what I'm seeing more and more is that on the back end, meaning the back end of the defense for Navy, they're getting out athleted, and that's the problem, is that you've got these teams now who can put 4 wide receivers on the field, spread them out, throw the ball if they want to. Navy's got to take some chances. They got to move some people around on the back end in terms of mixing in coverages. So to me, it's as simple as when the secondary plays better for Navy, they got a chance to beat a lot of people in college football.
And finally, Memphis sits at 4-0 for the second time since 2015. The Tigers coming in at number 23 in this week's coaches poll. And Andy, fun stat for you. The Tigers are holding its opponents to under 16 points a game this year. When are you going to buy into the Memphis defense?
When their defense plays great against SMU and Cincinnati and UCF and does it in a big spot. However, against Louisiana Monroe, I know the last 2 times those teams played, I think it was 37-29, something like that. So hold Louisiana Monroe to under 20. That's another step forward. But again, how are we really going to judge this Memphis defense, right? Are we going to go nuts over the fact that they're holding all these other teams down? And if they don't do it against, say, SMU or Cincinnati or UCF, you know what we'll say? Okay, the defense is good, but they're not great. They need their defense to be great this year. Keep working at it. Keep taking the steps forward. The tougher challenges are coming. So I'm not going to sit here and put the stamp on the Memphis defense after 4 games.
All right, we'll keep that conversation rolling. Well, make sure you follow along with us all week long on Twitter and on Facebook. You can check out highlights and game recaps and a whole lot more. Follow along on Twitter at American_FB. The action starts Thursday night. We have a Friday night game and a whole bunch going on Saturday. So thanks so much for joining us on the American Huddle. On behalf of Andy Gresham, Haley Outen, we'll see you back here next week.